The morning sun filtered through the curtains of Michael and Emily's bedroom, casting a warm glow that belied the cold distance growing between them. Michael lay awake, staring at the ceiling, replaying the small but unsettling changes he'd noticed in Emily over the past few weeks. Emily, once so animated in her stories about work and life, had become quieter, distracted even. Her phone, always left casually on the counter, now seemed glued to her side, the screen flipped face down. When Michael asked her about her late nights at the office, she would smile and say, "Big campaign deadlines," but her eyes didn't quite meet his. That Saturday morning, as Emily busied herself in the kitchen, Michael watched her from the living room. Her laughter, so natural and infectious, sounded forced as she spoke on the phone. The conversation ended abruptly when she caught him looking, her expression shifting from joy to something more guarded.
"Who was that?"
Michael asked, feigning casual curiosity. "Oh, just a work thing," she replied, turning away quickly. The nagging feeling in Michael's chest grew heavier. It wasn't one thing. It was everything. The hushed phone calls, the sudden change at her wardrobe to include outfits he hadn't seen before, and the subtle way she distanced herself when he tried to get close. But what hit Michael the hardest was the way Emily seemed to avoid their rituals, the late-night chats over a glass of wine, the Sunday morning hikes they'd always loved. He began to wonder if it was all in his head, or if there was something darker lurking behind the mask of normalcy. Michael decided he couldn't ignore his instincts any longer. That day, he resolved to start paying closer attention to the little things: texts, conversations, body language. If something was wrong, he would uncover the truth, no matter how much it hurt. As Emily left for her yoga class later that afternoon, Michael stood by the window, watching her car disappear down the street. His heart was a storm of anxiety and determination, a prelude to the journey he didn't yet know would shatter his world. That evening, Michael found himself alone in the house, pacing the living room. His mind was racing with questions, doubts, and fears. He tried to focus on the mundane, watching TV, scrolling through his phone, but nothing could distract him from the gnawing feeling that something was amiss. A notification buzzed on the coffee table. Emily had left her work tablet behind, a rare occurrence given how inseparable she was from her devices. It felt like a sign, an opportunity, though Michael hesitated. Snooping wasn't something he ever imagined himself doing, but desperation overrode his sense of morality. Taking a deep breath, he powered on the tablet and navigated through her apps. At first, everything seemed routine: emails, meeting notes, project files. Then he saw it, a messaging app he didn't recognize. His stomach tightened as he clicked it open. The first few messages were innocuous, casual exchanges about work deadlines. But then, as he scrolled further, his breath caught. The tone shifted: playful banter, inside jokes, and a flurry of heart emojis that weren't meant for him. One message stood out: "Last night was amazing. I can't wait to see you again." Michael's hands trembled as he stared at the screen, his chest tightening with a mix of anger and heartbreak. The sender's name was listed as C. It wasn't a name he recognized, but the familiarity in their exchanges made it clear this wasn't just a colleague. Just as he was about to read more, the sound of the garage door opening startled him. Emily was home. Panicking, Michael quickly locked the tablet and placed it back where he'd found it. She walked in, smiling, holding a bag of groceries. "Hey, what are you up to?" she asked, her voice light and cheerful, as if everything was normal. Michael forced a smile, his heart pounding. "Nothing, just watching TV," he said, masking the turmoil inside. That night, as Emily went about her usual routine, Michael couldn't stop replaying the messages in his mind. He needed to know more: who C was, what exactly was going on, and how long it had been happening. Lying in bed beside her, he felt a growing chasm between them. Emily seemed so at ease, but Michael was unraveling. He realized he couldn't confront her yet, not until he had more answers. The hunt for the truth had only just begun. The next morning, Michael woke early, the weight of the previous night's discovery pressing heavily on him. Emily was still asleep, her face serene, a sharp contrast to the storm raging inside him. He slipped out of bed quietly, deciding that if he was going to uncover the truth, He needed to play it smart. Michael started his day as usual, acting as though everything was fine. Over breakfast, Emily mentioned another late meeting at work, her tone casual. "Don't wait up for me tonight," she said with a smile, sipping her coffee. Michael nodded, his face betraying none of the turmoil beneath. "No problem. I might work late too," he replied, planting the seeds of his plan. As Emily left for work, Michael decided to follow her. He had never imagined himself resorting to such measures, but the cryptic messages and her recent behavior left him no choice. He waited a few minutes after she pulled out of the driveway, then grabbed his car keys and followed at a distance. Emily's car weaved through the usual suburban streets, heading toward the downtown area, where her office was located. Michael's heart pounded as he tailed her, careful to stay far enough behind to avoid suspicion. But just before reaching her office, Emily made an unexpected turn down a quiet side street. Michael frowned, his instincts on high alert. He followed cautiously as her car pulled into the parking lot of a small, boutique hotel. Michael's grip tightened on the steering wheel as he watched Emily step out of the car, her phone in hand. She glanced around briefly, as though checking her surroundings, before walking toward the entrance. Moments later, a man emerged from the lobby, a tall, confident figure Michael didn't recognize. The man greeted Emily with a warm smile, and she responded with an embrace that was far too intimate to be platonic. Michael's chest constricted as he watched them walk inside together, laughing as though they didn't have a care in the world. Parked in his car, Michael felt a mix of fury, heartbreak, and betrayal. His worst suspicions had just been confirmed, but the pain of seeing it unfold with his own eyes was unbearable. He pulled out his phone, snapping a few photos from a distance. It wasn't just about proof. It was about confronting Emily with undeniable evidence when the time came. Michael sat there for what felt like an eternity, his mind racing with questions. Who was this man? How long had this been going on? And, most importantly, what was he going to do about it? As the sun began to set, Michael finally drove away, his thoughts churning. He knew he couldn't confront Emily yet, not without fully understanding the depth of her betrayal. He would dig deeper, uncover every detail, and ensure there was no way for her to lie her way out of this. The game had changed, and Michael was ready to play that evening. Michael returned home, his mind buzzing with anger and confusion. He knew confronting Emily without more evidence might lead to denials or deflections. Instead, he decided to dig deeper. He needed to piece together the full picture before making his next move. After dinner, Emily excused herself, claiming she had a video call for work. Michael watched as she disappeared into their home office, shutting the door behind her. It was the perfect opportunity. He quietly retrieved her tablet again, now more determined than ever. This time, he explored deeper into the messaging app. The messages between Emily and C painted a clear, painful picture: weekly meetups, shared secrets, and even plans for an upcoming weekend getaway. One message stood out: "I'll tell him soon. We just need to figure out the timing." Michael's heart sank as he read those words. She was planning something, perhaps even leaving him. His worst fear was no longer a suspicion. It was becoming a reality. He copied screenshots of the messages and saved them on his own device. But he wasn't done. His instincts told him there might be more, something that would give him the upper hand. Emily's laptop sat on her desk, unlocked. He hesitated for a moment, but the pain of betrayal pushed him forward. As he navigated through her files, he discovered a folder labeled Personal. Inside were receipts, hotel bookings, expensive dinners, even a jewelry purchase from a high-end boutique. None of these were things she had ever mentioned to him. One receipt in particular made his blood boil: a booking confirmation for a weekend at a luxury resort, set for the upcoming Friday. Emily had told him she would be attending a work retreat that weekend. The realization hit him like a freight train. She wasn't just lying, she was living a double life. Michael sat back, his mind racing. Confrontation was inevitable, but he wanted it to be on his terms. A plan began to form in his mind, one that would expose Emily's betrayal in a way she would never forget. For now, he had to act normal, no matter how much it hurt. As Emily emerged from the office, smiling as if nothing had happened, Michael forced a smile of his own. Inside, he was burning, but outwardly, he remained calm. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. The week leading up to Friday was a test of Michael's patience. Every moment he spent with Emily felt like a charade, her smiles and casual conversations now laced with betrayal in his eyes. He played the role of the oblivious husband perfectly, but every passing second fueled his resolve. On Thursday night, Emily began packing her suitcase for the work retreat. Michael watched from the doorway, his heart pounding with a mix of anger and determination. "Do you need any help?" he asked casually, masking his true emotions. Emily shook her head with a smile. "No, it's just for a couple of days. I won't need much." She zipped up her bag and kissed him on the cheek. "I'll miss you, though," she added, her voice laced with a sweetness that now felt hollow. Michael nodded, swallowing the bitterness rising in his throat. "I'll miss you too," he replied, his voice steady. Inside, he was already counting down the hours. The next morning, Emily left early, giving Michael a quick hug before heading out the door. He watched her drive away, his expression unreadable. As soon as she was out of sight, Michael sprang into action. He had taken the day off work, knowing exactly where she was headed. Using the confirmation email he had found earlier, Michael knew the name and address of the luxury resort. He also had the incriminating messages and receipts stored on his phone. It was time to expose the truth. Michael arrived at the resort in the early afternoon. Parking his car in a secluded spot, he made his way to the lobby, his heart pounding with anticipation. He didn't check in. Instead, he discreetly waited in the lounge area, scanning the entrance for Emily. It didn't take long. Emily walked in, dressed in a flowing summer dress, her face glowing with excitement. She wasn't alone. The man Michael had seen at the boutique hotel was with her, his hand resting casually on her lower back as they approached the check-in desk. Michael's breath caught in his throat as he watched them interact like a couple without a care in the world. For a moment, he felt paralyzed, the weight of betrayal hitting him all over again. But then, his resolve hardened. This was the moment he had been waiting for. As the couple finished checking in and began walking toward the elevators, Michael stood and followed them at a distance. He waited until they entered their room before taking out his phone and calling the front desk. Posing as a concerned relative, he explained that his wife had just checked in but that she had forgotten an important item in the lobby. Within minutes, a staff member escorted him to their room. As the door opened, Emily's cheerful laugh echoed out before she froze, her eyes locking with Michael's. The room went silent, the tension palpable. Emily's face turned pale as she stammered, "Michael, what are you doing here?" Michael didn't answer immediately. Instead, he stepped inside, his eyes darting between Emily and the man, who looked just as stunned. Finally, Michael spoke, his voice cold and steady. "I think the better question is, what are you doing here?" He pulled out his phone, displaying the messages and photos. "Care to explain this?" Emily's face crumbled as the weight of her actions hit her. The man stepped forward, trying to say something, but Michael silenced him with a glare. "This is between me and my wife," Michael said sharply. He turned back to Emily, his voice rising with emotion. "I gave you everything, Emily, and this is how you repay me." Tears welled up in Emily's eyes, but Michael wasn't done. "I hope it was worth it," he said, his voice breaking. "Because this is over." Without waiting for a response, Michael turned and walked out of the room, leaving Emily and her lover in stunned silence. The pain was unbearable, but as he stepped into the sunlight outside, he felt the first flicker of freedom. The truth was out, and now he could start to rebuild. The drive home was a whirlwind of emotions for Michael: anger, heartbreak, and an overwhelming sense of relief. He had finally confronted the betrayal that had been eating away at him, but now he faced the daunting task of deciding what came next. When he arrived home, the emptiness of the house felt suffocating. Every room seemed to echo with memories of the life they had built together, a life now irreparably shattered. Michael sat down at the dining table, staring at his phone. He had countless messages from Emily, each one begging for a chance to explain. He couldn't bring himself to read them. He didn't need more lies or excuses. Instead, he opened his laptop and began drafting an email to their lawyer. Divorce was no longer a question. It was a certainty. Michael outlined everything, attaching the screenshots and evidence he had gathered. It was painful, but it gave him a sense of control over a situation that had left him feeling powerless. Later that evening, Emily returned home. She looked disheveled, her eyes red from crying. She stood in the doorway, clutching her purse, her expression a mix of guilt and desperation. "Michael, please," she started, her voice trembling. "Let me explain." Michael raised a hand, silencing her. "I don't want to hear it," he said, his voice firm but calm. "You made your choice, Emily, and now I'm making mine." Tears streamed down her face as she stepped closer. "It wasn't what you think. I was confused and—" "Stop," Michael interrupted, his voice sharper now. "You weren't confused when you lied to me. You weren't confused when you booked hotel rooms and planned your little getaway. You weren't confused when you betrayed our vows." Emily crumbled under his words, sinking into a chair. "I didn't mean to hurt you," she whispered. Michael's laugh was bitter. "You didn't mean to hurt me? Every step you took, every lie you told, it was a choice. And now you have to live with the consequences." The room fell silent, the weight of the confrontation hanging heavy in the air. Finally, Michael spoke again, his voice steady. "I've already contacted a lawyer. You'll be hearing from them soon." Emily's sobs grew louder, but Michael didn't waver. He stood and walked to the door, opening it wide. "I think it's best if you leave. You can stay with whoever he is. I don't care anymore." For a moment, Emily hesitated, her eyes searching his for any sign of forgiveness. But Michael's expression was resolute. She grabbed her purse and left without another word. As the door closed behind her, Michael felt an overwhelming sense of loss, but also a newfound clarity. The life he had known was over, but that didn't mean his life was. He had survived the worst, and now it was time to start anew. Sitting back down at the dining table, Michael picked up a notepad and began jotting down plans for his future. It wouldn't be easy, but he was determined to move forward, stronger, wiser, and free from the weight of betrayal. In the weeks that followed, Michael began the slow process of rebuilding his life. The initial days were the hardest, filled with moments of doubt and pain. The house felt emptier without Emily, but instead of letting the silence consume him, Michael turned it into an opportunity for self-reflection. He threw himself into work, picking up extra projects and pouring his energy into things he could control. He also reconnected with old friends he had lost touch with over the years. Their support reminded him that he wasn't alone, and their encouragement gave him strength to move forward. One evening, as he was sorting through the remnants of his married life, he stumbled upon an old photo album tucked away in a drawer. Flipping through the pages, he saw the smiles and memories of a happier time. It was bittersweet, but it also gave him closure. He realized that while the marriage had ended in betrayal, it wasn't all for nothing. He had grown, learned, and now had the chance to start over. Emily, meanwhile, had reached out several times, pleading for another chance. Her messages ranged from apologies to explanations, but Michael didn't respond. He had made his decision, and he wasn't going to let her manipulate him back into the past. One day, as he was cleaning out the last of her belongings, he found a letter she had written. It was an apology, handwritten and heartfelt, detailing her regrets and taking full responsibility for what she had done. While Michael appreciated the sentiment, it didn't change his resolve. Forgiveness didn't mean forgetting, and it didn't mean reconciliation. Instead of dwelling on the past, Michael focused on his future. He signed up for a hiking group, something he had always wanted to do, but never had the time for. On his first outing, he met a diverse group of people, each with their own stories of challenges and triumphs. It reminded him that life was about moving forward, even after the darkest moments. In the final scene, Michael stood atop a mountain trail, the sun setting in the distance. He took a deep breath, feeling a sense of peace he hadn't felt in years. Life wasn't perfect, but it was his to rebuild. And for the first time in a long time, he felt hopeful. The story ended with a message: betrayal may break you, but it doesn't have to define you. Healing is possible, and the strength to rebuild lies within.